He walked in wearing a hoodie, unrecognized, unwelcomed, and mistaken for a man who didn't belong. But this wasn't just a visit, it was a test. Because the man they dismissed, he built that diner from scratch, with sweat memory and a promise to his grandmother. And when he came back the next morning, not in disguise, but in truth, everything changed. What happens when a leader returns to find the soul of his dream slipping away? You're about to find out. Dear viewer, what you are about to witness is not just a story, it is a powerful testament to the quiet power and pursuit of justice in places most people ignore. If this is your first time here, I warmly invite you to share where you are watching in the comments below. And if stories like this move you, challenge you, or make you think, consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon. We share voices that deserve to be heard every day. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get into the story. He hadn't stepped inside the place in over 14 months, not since his mother's funeral, not since his name became more brand than person. But this morning, long before sunrise, cracked over the Atlanta skyline, Andre Whitmore sat alone in a parked sedan across the street from what used to be his heart and Legacy Whitmore's table. Once it had been more than a diner. It was a lifeline, a second home for those who'd fallen through the cracks, a tribute to his late grandmother, Evelyn Whitmore, who raised him in a two-bedroom shotgun house with grease-stained aprons and enough warmth to feed a neighborhood. Evelyn never turned anyone away. If they're hungry, feed 'em, she used to say, even when the pantry was near empty. Andre had promised he'd build something that carried her fire forward. But fire flickers when no one tends it. Something had changed. The Yelp reviews hinted at first complaints about cold service, unwelcoming vibes, and staff who act like you're invisible. He tried to dismiss them. Maybe people were just hard to please these days. But when Reggie, the line cook he'd mentored straight out of prison, left a cryptic voicemail saying, "You might want to come see for yourself, boss," he couldn't ignore it any longer. So this morning, under the stillness of a sky yet to turn blue, Andre zipped up a hoodie, scuffed some dirt on his sneakers, and pulled an old Braves cap low over his brow. He didn't bring a briefcase or business cards. No one would recognize the man who once shook hands with the mayor on this very sidewalk. That was the point. He needed to see the truth, not the polished version presented for social media or investor meetings, but the raw, unfiltered energy of the place when nobody thought the owner was watching. At 7:52 a.m., just before the breakfast rush, he opened the car door and stepped into the crisp Georgia morning. The diner's neon sign buzzed faintly, a flicker in the corner where the T in Whitmore had begun to fail. He hadn't fixed it. He hadn't even noticed until now. He entered through the front. The bell didn't ring. No one looked up. 3 tables were already filled. 2 men in construction gear, sharing grits and gravy. A young woman in scrubs nodding off over black coffee, and an elderly couple in silence, hands barely touching across the table. Andre walked to the counter. Behind it, a boy no older than 20 with bleached dreadlocks and slouched posture leaned against the coffee machine. He didn't speak, just jerked his chin up as if to say, "What you want?" Andre offered a small smile. "Just a breakfast sandwich. Eggs, sausage wheat toast, coffee black." The kid sighed, actually sighed, and tapped the screen lazily. "That it?" Andre nodded. "That's it. That'll be $6.50. Andre paid in cash. Still no eye contact. He stepped aside to wait. But what came next would drop his stomach like a stone in water. Two girls behind the pastry case were whispering, quiet enough to seem subtle, loud enough to be overheard. "You see this guy?" "Probably homeless," one muttered. "Definitely looks like he crawled out of a shelter." The other snorted. "Another one of those fake deep types. Bet he orders like avocado toast and lectures you about your energy." I'm so sick of them rolling in here acting entitled. The first girl leaned against the espresso machine, rolling her eyes. Ever since they started that second chance hiring crap, this place been going downhill. I miss when we had standards. Now anybody can work here or eat here. Andre didn't flinch. He just listened. Hard. They say the guy who owns this place is like some big shot entrepreneur, the second girl added. But I've never seen him. Bet he's in a condo, somewhere drinking oat milk lattes while we do all the damn work. Andre looked down at his shoes. They were the same ones he wore when he signed the lease on this building. Same ones he had on when he helped Reggie scrub grease traps during their first month in business. Back then, every shift ended with a prayer and a playlist of Evelyn's favorite gospel records. Now, now the air felt sterile, detached, cold. His sandwich came out on a cracked ceramic plate. No garnish, no warmth. The cashier dropped it on the counter like it owed him money. Andre picked it up, nodded once, and carried it to the back booth. Evelyn's booth. The seat creaked as he sat. The vinyl was torn. He took a bite. The eggs were overcooked, the sausage dry. He chewed slowly, watching the rhythm of the room, the flow of bodies, the absence of joy, the vacancy where community used to live. His hands curled into fists beneath the table. He had poured his life into this place, not just money or sweat, but intention. This was supposed to be the heartbeat of something better, a model of what business could be when rooted in grace, not greed. A haven. But the heart was gone, and nobody even realized it. Andre stood up, left the sandwich, half eaten, and walked to the register. The kid looked up briefly. "Everything all right?" Andre met his eyes. For a split second. Then he said quietly, "Not even close," and he walked out. Not because he was done, but because he needed to decide what came next. And when he came back, he wouldn't be wearing a hoodie. Andre didn't drive far, just around the block, far enough to get out of sight, close enough to keep his ears on the street. His sandwich sat cold in the passenger seat, untouched, while the taste of something far worse lingered in his mouth, disappointment. He rolled the windows down halfway and stared at the building. Whitmore's table. The name still made his chest warm, even as the reality left him chilled. That name was a promise, a table for all. But what he'd seen, heard, wasn't a table set for inclusion. It was a counter manned by bitterness, by kids who didn't know or didn't care about the roots beneath their feet. Andre sipped lukewarm coffee and waited. The back alley behind the restaurant was known mostly to cooks and delivery guys. It was where he used to sneak smoke breaks with Reggie, back in the early days, back when a 3-star review would keep him up all night, and a full tip jar made him dance in the kitchen. That alley, narrow and dented with tire tracks, was where he learned to listen. So he went back. He parked behind the dumpster, pulled his hoodie tighter, and walked quietly along the brick wall. The exhaust fan buzzed above the back door, and a small window, propped open with a broken spatula, let the clatter of the kitchen spill out into the morning air. It was Reggie's voice he heard first. "Y'all need to cool it," he said. His tone wasn't loud but firm, like a man trying to hold a boundary he knew was about to break. Laughter followed. A girl sounded like the barista from earlier. "Come on, Reg. Don't act like you ain't been fed up too." "I've been tired," Reggie replied. "But tired don't mean careless." Andre moved closer, careful not to cast a shadow in the window's glow. Inside, Reggie stood near the grill, arms folded, his apron stained, but crisp. Reggie had always been a fortress of discipline, a man who came from chaos and craved order, the kind who measured his salt like it mattered to someone's soul. Andre had given him a shot years ago when no one else would. No resume, no credentials, just a halfway house referral and tired eyes. Now, he was the backbone of the kitchen. Kendall and Mariah been cutting corners for weeks, Reggie continued. They rush plates, forget tickets, talk sideways to customers like they doing them a favor just by being here. They're just kids, someone muttered. And this place used to be just a diner, Reggie snapped. But now it's a name. It means something. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was reflective. Andre leaned into the wall, the bricks cold against his back. This was the kind of conversation he hadn't heard in too long. Not reports, not metrics, just truth. Honest talk between people who worked with their hands and held their pride in paper napkins and hot skillets. Another voice, cut in female, softer. I miss when Mr. Whitmore used to eat with us, she said. He'd sit right at the counter, ask about our families. Made you feel like you weren't invisible. Reggie grunted. Yeah. Back when folks acted like the name on the sign actually stood for something. The words stung, not because they weren't true, but because they were. Andre stepped back from the window, his breath steady but tight. He walked to his car, pulled out a notebook, and jotted down 3 words. Forgettable. Invisible. Soulless. He didn't need stats. He needed soul checks. And right now, his place was flatlining. Later that afternoon, he called a meeting. No warning. No pretense. Just a short message sent out through the staff group chat mandatory meeting. 8 a.m. Be on time. He watched from his car again the next morning. Kendall arrived with earbuds and shoulders slumped. Mariah on her phone thumb, scrolling face blank. Reggie, early key in hand, jaw set. Others filed in, unsure, awkward. Andre waited until the last minute, then stepped out of the car in a charcoal blazer and walked through the front door like he used to. Heads turned. One waitress dropped a spoon. Mariah's mouth opened slightly, eyes wide. Kendall froze, like the screen had glitched. Andre didn't say a word. He walked to the front counter, stood still. Then slowly, deliberately, he turned to face them all. This is not how this place was built, he said, and it sure as hell is not how it's going to continue. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. I came here yesterday as a customer, dressed down, hoodie, quiet. I ordered a sandwich and got served something colder than the plate. They shifted. Eyes darted. I didn't just taste the food. I tasted the energy, and it was bitter. He paused. I heard words behind the counter. Words about people like they didn't matter. Words about me. And that's fine if I was just an absent name on a check. But I'm not. He scanned the room. I'm the man who cleaned that grease trap with his own hands, who scrubbed those tiles after the health inspector gave us a C. I'm the man who told the bank no to a loan because I wanted to hire people who needed a second shot. This ain't just a restaurant. It's a story. And some of y'all been flipping the script. No one moved. Andre let the silence stretch. Then he softened. But I believe in change, and I believe some of you still carry the soul of this place. That's why you're here. He turned to Reggie. You've been trying to hold the line. I see you. Then to the girl who had spoken softly the night before. And you remembered the counter, the real one, where community lived. He looked at Kendall and Mariah last. I won't fire you today. Not yet. But you've been caught on the wrong side of the mirror. So now's your chance to step over. He stepped back. We start over. New standards. New expectations. You don't just clock in anymore. You show up. And if you can't, the door is open. I won't beg. This table doesn't belong to you. It belongs to every person who ever walked in here hungry for more than food. Andre walked toward the back, then paused. See you at lunch. And with that, he left the room. The voices behind the counter had spoken. Now it was time to see who would use them to build or bury something bigger. Under the worn wooden floorboards of Whitmore's table, there were stories no customer had ever heard. Scratches, spills, and heavy footsteps had left behind quiet echoes of people who had bled sweat and hope into the space. Andre Whitmore knew those stories well. They weren't in ledgers or spreadsheets. They were in the walls, in the way the sun hit the front window, just right at 4 p.m. In the smell of collard greens simmering with smoked turkey bones not bacon Ellie's way. Andre stood alone before the lunch rush, walking the line of the kitchen. He wasn't there to inspect the burners or count the plates. He was listening, feeling. The energy of a place always told the truth before the people did. And today, it was uneasy, but alive. He had barely slept after the staff meeting, not because of anger, though he had felt that too, but because he knew that what had unraveled wasn't just a symptom of bad employees. It was a reflection of what he'd stopped nurturing. A culture doesn't rot overnight. It weakens with silence. And Andre had been silent for too long. As he stood over the prep table, he ran his hand over a faded chip in the counter. He remembered the night it cracked. Reggie had dropped a crate of lemons after pulling a double. Andre had laughed, handed him a towel, and said, "This place will break before you do." Now he wasn't so sure. Reggie walked in around 10:50, nodding but saying nothing. The respect between them was unspoken now, a language that didn't need translation. Andre didn't need to ask whether Reggie had stayed late the night before. He could see it in the polished steel, the stacked pans, the way the spice shelf was alphabetized again. Reggie didn't talk about loyalty. He just lived it. "What are we running on special?" Andre finally asked. "Smoked turkey gumbo. Ellie's recipe. I figured we could use something that reminds folks who we are." Reggie replied without looking up. Andre smiled faintly. Good call. At 11:15, the front bell chimed. Mariah arrived early. Not on her phone. Hair tied back. No gum. She walked up to Andre and stood still, fidgeting just a little. "I read the article about your grandma," she said quietly. "The one framed in the back. I never read it before." Andre didn't respond right away. She fed people after church, sometimes even on her porch. That's what this place came from, right? He nodded. That's exactly where it came from. Mariah looked down. "I forgot how much food can mean. Most people never knew," Andre said. "But now you do." As more staff trickled in, something subtle started to shift. It wasn't applause-worthy or cinematic. It was small human. Tiana polished the silverware twice. Cherie straightened the napkin holders without being asked. Kendall still hadn't said much, but when Andre caught him sweeping behind the soda machine somewhere, no one looked unless they were searching for redemption. He nodded. By noon, the first rush rolled in. An older man in a military jacket sat by the window and asked for extra ice. A young woman with a stroller bounced her baby while ordering to go. A couple in matching sweatshirts debated over cornbread or biscuits. It was nothing special. and that made it everything. Andre didn't hide in the office. He moved through the dining room, checking water levels, picking up stray receipts, thanking customers by name. When he passed Reggie, he heard him telling a new line cook, "If it's not seasoned with care, it's just calories." That was Ellie's phrase. That meant something. At one point, Andre ducked into the back pantry to grab more tea bags and noticed a sticky note on the wall. It wasn't his handwriting. "Leave it better than you found it." A beat passed, then a smile. He stepped out and saw Isaiah, the shy young man from the shelter program, sitting at the counter. This time, no hoodie. Just a collared shirt sleeves rolled a bus pass clipped to his belt. He was laughing softly with Mariah, who handed him a fresh lemonade free of charge. Andre lingered by the coffee station, watching. When the tip jar filled without prompting, when customers lingered, instead of rushing out, he knew something had rooted again. Something deeper than routine or rules. It was memory. It was meaning. At 2:15, when the lull arrived, Andre gathered the team briefly by the booths. "I'm not here to give another speech," he said, "but I want to say one thing." They looked up, tired, but attentive. "This place doesn't run on food. It runs on people, on purpose, on soul, and you can't fake that." He looked at each of them one by one. "Today I saw glimpses of what it used to be, but more importantly, I saw what it could still become." There was a quiet agreement in the air, like soil being turned and seeds finally touching earth again. Later that night, long after the last dish was washed and the lights dimmed low, Andre sat alone at the counter. No notebook, no disguise, just a cup of decaf and an old playlist humming through the speakers. He looked down at the floor, the scuffed tile beneath his feet. That's where the roots lived, not in the decor, not in the recipes, but in the floorboards, in the people who walked them every day, in the ones who had come back, and in the ones still deciding if they would. He whispered, "We're not done yet, because legacy isn't something you inherit. It's something you repair, brick by brick, voice by voice, choice by choice." Under the mellow afternoon light, slanting through the front windows of Whitmore's table, something unspoken was shifting. The tables hadn't moved. The decor remained the same, and yet the air itself seemed to breathe differently. It wasn't just that people were doing their jobs, it was the way they were doing them. A few days ago, it was all obligation and minimum effort. Now, it was quiet, intention. Andre Whitmore stood by the espresso machine, his eyes watching more than the foam building inside a mug. He was studying movement, Tiana guiding a confused tourist to a table with a soft hand on his shoulder. Reggie showing Isaiah how to slice brisket with precision and pride, Mariah wiping down the laminated menus twice without being asked. These weren't performative gestures. They were acts of belonging, of recovery, but it hadn't come easy. That morning before the doors even opened, Andre had found an anonymous note taped under the staff corkboard. It was written in black ink, slanted cursive. "It's not perfect, but it feels worth saving again." There was no signature, no need. The note stayed in his wallet now. Not because it proved the culture was fixed, it didn't, but because it reminded him how change shows up slow, reluctant, and deeply personal. Just before the lunch wave, Andre pulled Kendall aside. They hadn't spoken privately since the hallway confrontation. Kendall still avoided long conversations, but he showed up early every day. He swept stocked the cups, and most importantly, hadn't said a careless word since. "Walk with me," Andre said, motioning toward the alley out back. Kendall followed. The air outside was cooler, the alley quiet except for the hum of a delivery truck idling 2 blocks down. I'm not here to rehash what you said, Andre began. You already know that part. Kendall nodded slowly. I do. What I want to know is why are you still here? Kendall hesitated, then shrugged. I don't know. Maybe because this place still gave me a shot even after I blew it. Andre let that sit between them. I don't expect perfection, he said, but I do expect intention. That means being aware of the energy you carry, especially in a place that's trying to heal. Kendall looked down. I'm learning, Mr. Whitmore. I swear I am. I just wasn't taught how to be part of something bigger than myself. Andre gave a nod. Then let this place teach you. When they returned inside, the line was already curling near the front. A woman in a nurse's scrubs stood behind a construction worker with concrete on his boots. A man in a sharp suit glanced at his watch, but stayed put. There was a rhythm to it all, now messy, alive human. Andre jumped in, clearing a table himself when the busser got backed up. He dropped menus, poured water, and even served a plate of peach cobbler to a couple celebrating their anniversary first-timers, who said the diner had come highly recommended by word of mouth no less. That mattered more than any Yelp star. At 2:35 p.m., the unexpected happened. The front door swung open, and a group of 5 men walked in together, quiet, composed. They wore matching button-down shirts, dark navy with silver embroidery. It took Andre a second, but then he recognized one of them, Lawrence Tate, former city councilman, a longtime community organizer. Beside him were 2 retired educators, a nonprofit director, and an older gentleman Andre recognized as Reverend Mays. They walked with quiet authority, not flashy, but grounded. People who had led movements and meals and neighborhoods. Tiana greeted them first. Table for 5. Lawrence shook his head. Actually, we were hoping to speak to the owner. Andre stepped forward, brushing flour off his hands. That'd be me. Andre Whitmore. Lawrence smiled. We know. They asked to sit in the back booth, the one Ellie had always used on Sundays after church. Once they were seated, Lawrence leaned in. We've been hearing things, he said. Good things, but more importantly, different things. About how this place is changing. Andre said nothing, waiting. And we wanted to see it for ourselves, Reverend Mays added, not because of the menu, but because of the message. Andre furrowed his brow slightly. What message? Lawrence smiled. That second chances are real here. That leadership doesn't hide behind glass. That this place still remembers where it came from. Andre sat with that. I hope that's true, he replied. We're trying. Lawrence placed a manila envelope on the table. We're working on a city initiative small business mentorship with emphasis on cultural preservation. We're selecting 5 anchor institutions to pilot it with. Restaurants, barbershops, bookstores, places that mean more than money. He tapped the envelope. We want Whitmore's table to be one of them. Andre blinked. Why? Reverend Mays answered. Because people are watching. And because you chose not to walk away. Andre felt his breath catch just slightly. For a man who had spent days feeling invisible inside his own business, to now be seen clearly fully by men who had shaped the very soul of Atlanta was something he hadn't prepared for. He opened the envelope later, after the rush died down. Inside was a letter of intent, a partnership proposal, and handwritten notes from each man at the table about what Ellie's legacy meant to them. None of them had ever met her, but they felt her. That was legacy. As he read, Mariah approached with a question about the new inventory list. Reggie called out that the gumbo was running low. Isaiah asked if he could learn how to work the fryer next week. Andre looked up from the papers and smiled. The table had turned, but not because he demanded it. Because people leaned in, owned their part, planted something again. The next morning, the sky over Atlanta cracked open in soft gold, the kind of light that didn't demand attention, but earned it anyway. Inside Whitmore's table, the kitchen was already humming knives against boards, pots clinking gently, someone humming an old gospel tune under their breath. But it wasn't noise, it was rhythm, a quiet ceremony of purpose. Andre Whitmore sat alone in the front booth, the same seat he'd watched go cold the day he walked in undercover. This time, the cushion was still warm from the breakfast rush. His notebook lay open before him, the pages filled with messy handwriting, plans, promises, and pauses. But today's entry wasn't business. It was memory. He stared out the window, where the world moved on, without ever really noticing places like his. That was the thing about diners. Nobody writes poems about them, but they hold whole lives between refills. And lately, he'd been thinking about what places like this carried, about what people carry, in and out of doors like these every day. Regret, hope, shame, hunger, dreams, resilience. Isaiah had just started handling the fryer. Tiana was mentoring a high school intern through a youth workforce program. Reggie Eversteady had started leaving post-it notes with quiet affirmations above the prep table. One read, "Your hands. Remember more than your fear." Someone added below it in pencil, "So does your heart." But for Andre, the real shift hadn't been in policies or partnerships. It was in what he allowed himself to carry now and what he finally chose to put down. He used to carry this silent guilt that stepping back meant he had abandoned the soul of the place, that giving space meant losing touch. But now he understood something deeper. Leadership isn't about constant control. It's about presence, about choosing to be seen and to see, to correct with care, and to walk beside, not ahead. Later that afternoon, Marina returned. She wasn't in uniform, just jeans and a soft lavender sweatshirt, holding a small envelope. Andre met her outside under the awning, where folks sometimes waited for their to-go orders. She didn't say much, just handed him the envelope and said, "It's a thank you." And an apology. Inside was a note and a photo. The note was short. "You taught me more by not yelling than anyone ever did screaming. I see it now. Thank you for not giving up too soon." The photo was of her and Isaiah smiling awkwardly, standing in front of the shelter program's new mural. There was paint on their shoes. Andre smiled. He didn't need her to come back. He just needed her to understand what she'd been part of and what she'd left behind. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the diner floor, the staff gathered for a quick pre-dinner huddle. No clipboards, no lectures, just shared stories and a few laughs over burnt cornbread someone tried to reheat. Andre stood in the center, then looked around the room. "We're not done," he said, voice low but clear. "There's no arrival point in this work. Just choices, daily ones. What kind of energy we bring in, what kind of weight we lay down, and what we decide to carry forward. That's how we write this place's future." No one clapped. No one needed to. The silence was agreement. And as the bell over the door rang again, announcing the first dinner customer, Andre looked down at the floorboards beneath his feet, worn, stained honest. The kind of wood that remembers every step, he exhaled. Some burdens break us, but some, when shared, build the kind of foundation you can stand on for generations. Andre Whitmore's journey began with a quiet suspicion and a broken connection to a place he once built with his bare hands and boundless heart. What he found, disguised under a hoodie and behind the anonymity of a stranger, was not just indifference, but the slow unraveling of a dream meant to honor his grandmother's spirit and feed more than just bodies. His diner, once a sanctuary for second chances and soul food, had turned into a place of casual disrespect where apathy outpaced purpose. Yet instead of anger, Andre chose awareness. Instead of condemnation, he chose confrontation with care. What unfolded from that decision was a reawakening not only for his team, but for himself. He rekindled a presence that had been missing not just physically, but emotionally. He offered honesty, accountability, and above all, choice. In doing so, he rediscovered the soul of Whitmore's table and gave others the room to find themselves in it too. Reggie's quiet loyalty, Marina's eventual humility, Kendall's shaky but sincere turnaround. These weren't just supporting characters in a redemption arc. They were mirrors reflecting the ripple effect of leadership that listens, corrects, and forgives. Each person in that diner carried baggage, but through Andre's return and renewed commitment, they learned how to unpack some of it and leave lighter than they came. The true legacy of Whitmore's table wasn't just in the recipes or the logo above the door. It was in the culture that was rebuilt one shift, one conversation, one brave decision at a time. It reminded us that when we ignore the soul of a space, it withers quietly, but when we return with intention, it blooms again, imperfect, but honest. So what's the takeaway for us? That leadership isn't about titles or distance. It's about showing up, especially when it's uncomfortable. That dignity at work should never depend on whether the boss is watching. That second chances matter, but only when paired with self-awareness and growth. And that the smallest decisions, how we greet someone, how we speak when no one's listening, can define the culture of an entire place. In a world moving faster than ever, Andre's story is a reminder to pause, reflect, and rebuild what truly matters. Whether you run a business, work the register, or just walk through the doors of a place that feeds your spirit, remember you help shape its soul. If this story moved you, made you reflect, or reminded you of a place or person worth fighting for, subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us keep telling real stories that carry heart, truth, and purpose. Until next time, stay present, stay kind, and never underestimate the power of coming back when it matters most.